Hey guys, just a real quick one piece at a time Distilling Institute video. Probably this weekend or next week sometime, Kim and I will be sitting down with a bevy of historic whiskey samples to go through again, as we recently did. But this evening, I had attended the funeral of a good family friend of ours, Mr. Kevin Lawson, one of the best good men that I ever knew in my life. Lifetime firefighter, and he was also a paramedic and just an all-around good guy. He was actually the first guy that ever came to visit Kim and I at our house that we live in. That was my grandparents' old house, and he went out of his way to come visit me at Copper and King's American Brandy Company, as well as Spirits of French Lick. And had he not been sick, I'm sure he would have made his way over to Old Homestead Distillery at some point in time. So heavy heart, obviously. So I decided to come home and have a couple small drinks here. So I had intended to do full videos with Kim on all of these, and got a little ahead of myself. So, but I will tell you, I have a sample from a friend here who recently bought into Copper Sea Distillery, and he had sent me a 100% rye malt 9-year-old, 118 proof. I don't know how much that stock he has, but guys, this was special. You guys, if you followed me on Distillers Talk or on One Piece at a Time, you know that I absolutely love malted rye whiskey. It has that sort of peach candy, biting into a peach, that sort of taste that you get where the skin meets the flesh. It's got that in droves, but it also has English toffee and grains of paradise, a little bit of real soft Ceylon cinnamon underneath of it. Just a beautiful, beautiful round whiskey. I don't know how many barrels of that stuff they've got, but that, ladies and gentlemen, is a winner. I would drink this all day long, over any bourbon on the market, period, end of story. Copper Sea's a little distillery, I believe, up in New York. Keep your eye out on them, for them, as it were. I know they've got some new ownership, and I think they're going to be doing big things. But anyways, the one for Kevin here tonight, and the one that gave me a little bit more confidence in myself. So Peter Garlock and Company Cider Brandy. So this is an apple brandy. District number 46, 28th District of New York. Prohibition pint, bottled and bond, 100 proof. How often do you get to taste American apple brandy from Prohibition or before Prohibition? Very rarely. In my lifetime, it's very rare for me to get to come across true, actual distilled brandies that haven't been sweetened in some way or flavored in some way from that time period, right? I've only ever tasted one from Indiana, for example. I would love to taste more if people could find them. If you have samples of stuff like that, pre-Prohibition era Indiana apple brandy or peach brandy, oh guys, man, I would owe you a huge favor if you had that. But this Peter Garlick and Company, really interesting, really nice. It's a 4-year-old bottled and bond, obviously, from Prohibition, as we talked about. So Peter Garlick and Company started in the early 1800s with a distillery that made two products. So they distilled mint for essential oil, basically, or hydrosols, and they also distilled cider brandy. Now, I think when they started off, they were basically making use of whatever cider was around locally in the early 1800s, probably stuff that was going bad on the distillers, etc. And then later on, they shut the original distillery and they opened a new one where they focused on originally just cider. They were making several thousand barrels of cider yearly. And then they added a distillery to that. And this would have been from after that time period. This gave me renewed faith in my distillation. Sometimes I question whether or not my style of Hoosier apple brandy or my style of apple brandy in general is really up to par. And I know obviously my previous distiller did well with my apple brandy products and the passion that I put into that. But sometimes you get to question yourself as a distiller, and you should always question yourself as a distiller. So you got to test yourself. And boy, am I real happy. So this real light straw colored, obviously, probably in a used barrel of some type, maybe even in a toasted barrel. Could be, I don't know. The barrel influence is there, but it's very light. It's a very light hand when it comes to the wood. It's more of a balancing effect than it is letting the barrel do any of the real driving. It's there, I feel like, more to knock the edges off of the raw new make spirit, because raw new make apple brandy can be fairly harsh a lot of times. It's not dissimilar to corn whiskey or corn shine when it's white, as it were. And it can be a little bit of an acquired taste, but with just a little bit of mellowing, as we did here in the Black Forest of Southern Indiana, it becomes its own thing. And this is beautiful. So there's just a little vanilla on the front of that. A lot of like butter, like real homemade butter, like that buttery, not diacetyl, not buttered popcorn, not movie popcorn, real butter. Like if you ever had homemade butter and you put that on some toast, it's nice and warm, or on some pancakes. And truthfully, there's a little bit of like a unrefined maple syrup sort of note on the nose there too. The apple is there, and it's much like if you had something, imagine like an underripe Golden Delicious, and you've bit into it, and you're done chewing it, you've already swallowed, and you're just smelling the apple. That's sort of what you have here, like almost like that grainy, crunchy apple, traditional American culinary apple, right, in the modern era. The beautiful thing about this is that it remains feisty. It remains fighting in spirit, as it were. The approach is not at all dissimilar to my style of apple brandy. In fact, if this sample had been sent to me blind, I might have thought somebody was trying to pull one over on me and send me my own apple brandy, truthfully. And I don't say that to be braggadocious or anything. I say it because I feel like very rarely, regardless of any awards or those sort of things or accolades, whatever, very rarely do I ever have a moment where I'm like, pat myself on the back like, dude, no, you're doing just fine. This brought that home for me. So entry on the palate, like all traditional apple brandy, not a huge apple note initially, a little bit of heat, a little bit of spice, but it's that finish and that aromatic character. When you finish a good apple brandy, a true apple brandy, that aromatic character sort of, it almost builds on the back of the tongue and then up through your sinuses, and you exhale, and it's just like biting into an apple. It's out of place, it's out of time, it's in the middle of wintertime, haven't been any ripe apples, and this is Prohibition era, so there haven't been any of these ripe apples in a real long time, right? But they are alive, and they're vibrant, and they're real, and they're living in this glass, these apples from New York at that time period. And still it wants to fight a little bit, right? It ain't quote unquote smooth, which is a word that means nothing in the lexicon whatsoever of tasting any kind of spirit. In fact, it's quite the opposite of that. It is lively, it's festive, it reminds you that you're drinking something. In fact, it has that sort of gut feeling of you are alive, you are a part of this world, right? And these apples were a part of this world, and they've been preserved in a way where they are still living and can interact with you. It's a very abstract concept to put your finger on to explain that type of flavor and that type of approach to distillation. And if anything, I would say that the fact that this gentleman and his son, who took over for him, from what I understand, started off in the hydrosol and essential oil industry, that contributed to this. I can feel that character and that taste, that no, this is about the plant, this is about the raw material and balancing that raw material. And I've talked about this on the channel, where I get a lot of spirits nowadays where there aren't faults, but they're not lively because the approach is wrong, right? This, golden, fantastic. I am privileged to have an opportunity to taste this, and I want to thank my friend out there. Great guy whose name I don't want to say on the channel because I don't want people driving him up the wall for samples on stuff. But man, I wish I had 12 cases of this stuff. I also wish I had 12 cases of that copper sea. I'll go back to this copper sea real quick. I was telling my wife earlier, and I think you guys will appreciate this. I think one of the reasons why I like 100% malted rye whiskey so much is that peach sort of characteristic that does come across. And it's funny to me because malted rye almost tastes like what you wish actual peach brandy tasted like. It tastes more like peach brandy than peach brandy does. It's a very strange sort of thing. But anyways, guys, hey, listen, send me your distilling questions. Glad to answer them where I can, when I can, how I can, to the best of my ability, and find the answers for you. And make sure you go over to thealchemistcabinet.com, go to the warehouse, and pick up the 2025 Practical Distiller's Almanac. Love y'all. Later.